You have a chapter on women deciding whether or not to have another baby. How have you helped women figure out how to decide how many more kids to have or not have?
I think it was getting clear on what was causing me to be so back and forth with my decision. And it all came down to fear of making the wrong choice, fear of regrets, or, and also believing that somehow by having more kids, you might find some kind of fulfillment. And I think with my decision for the fifth child that we never had, but I was struggling with so much with the back and forth, thinking like I made the wrong choice. I should have more kids. I should have more faith that God would help me. And then finally deciding, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to have another one. And then not getting pregnant. And then getting to a point where, wait a minute, I don't really want another baby. And then like feeling, I think when I initially made that decision with baby number 5 was thinking that I was going to find some kind of satisfaction or fulfillment from that fifth child. And I think, and then that was this whole struggle with deciding to have the fifth child was right around the time of our faith crisis. And I think that I was searching for something and feeling like there was something that I needed to be doing, or something that needed to happen in my life. And I think that maybe it was confusion of maybe it means another baby. But I think now looking back, I can realize that perhaps it was my soul wanting to to grow and expand more and come out of this lifelong religion that is holding me back. And I think I like to talk about my life in puzzle pieces, and realizing that as I'm putting these pieces together, more and more I'm beginning to see the masterpiece, and it does start to make more sense over time. You start to realize, oh, maybe that's what caused me to have fear around this, or what caused me to make that decision. It's something much bigger than what you can see at this point.
Love it. And so you decided not to have that fifth kid.
Yeah.
How's that worked out?
Yeah, I think
there's that spirit up in heaven that now is going to go to a bad family. How do you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That was nice. It was right when we had the faith crisis is when I made the decision to stop trying for the fifth child. And it was a very peaceful feeling. Like I didn't feel, the only regret I had is that we spent so much money on getting the tubal ligation reversal. And so I've always carried that, like feeling bad that we went through that whole process. That was a very expensive procedure. But I don't feel any of those feelings that I had in the beginning when I got my tubes tied, and feeling that God was disappointed in me, or I could have done more, I could have more faith, or why don't I have more faith? I feel like so much peace with my decision. Now I'm no longer questioning myself and my own choice, which I constantly did, probably the majority of my marriage with Sean, constantly feeling like I didn't trust my own choices.
What have you learned about marriage, and specifically marriage to Sean? You've got a chapter, My Marriage, My Muse. You've got a chapter, Why Doesn't He Support My Dreams? What has this whole journey and process taught you about marriage, and about a woman's role, a man's role, or spouses' roles, or evolving non-traditional roles? What have you learned?
Definitely. There's just so many, and which we did touch up on. We talked a bit about it in the first interview that Sean and I did with you together, and some of the things that were very eye-opening for us in our marriage. But overall, I think finally getting to a place of more equality, more open communication, and more independence, maybe more on my end, emotionally independent, because I definitely felt like I relied on Sean a lot to say exactly what I wanted him to say, to do exactly what I wanted him to do. And I thought that these desires were valid. And now realizing that it's very important in marriage to get to a place where you can be your own support. And just because he doesn't say exactly what you want him to say doesn't mean necessarily that he doesn't support your dreams or that he doesn't understand you. I think that really it all comes down to, well, I can't expect him to be as passionate about my blog as I am, and so or as passionate about putting on an event for women as I am. So I think I just took it really harsh because he wasn't saying, I had this idea in my head of what he would say and what he would do. And then if he doesn't fulfill that, then I think there's something wrong. But it's just more realizing that you have to be the one that's supporting you. You have to be the one that believes in you. You have to be the one that loves you 100% and not always counting on your husband to fulfill all of that for you.
And part of that means being emotionally independent, not always needing their validation and not always needing their permission. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's so true.
Yeah. And what you talk about feeling beautiful at any age, shape, or size. And yet I've also seen you do like modeling shoots, and you and Sean, are, I'm sure you guys work hard to stay fit and to be as attractive as you can. So some people are going to be like, Crystal Escobar, you're not going to lecture me about, feeling better at any shape, age, or size. They're going to say, well, you guys are the beautiful people and you're not the ones that have to worry about these insecurities. How are these people right or wrong if they were to feel that way?
Well, I think one thing that people don't really realize is that we all have things that we don't like about our physical bodies. And no matter if other people might look at us and think like, what do you have to complain about? There are things that maybe they don't see that I see, like for me, which I do plan to talk about in my next YouTube video, is like acne has always been something that I've struggled with, and it's always been very embarrassing for me to talk about, and I've never really talked about it on social media, and I'm able to cover it and hide it well. So people don't know that there are other things that every person struggles with, and maybe it's not their weight, maybe it's not things that they can see on outwardly necessarily. And for me, definitely a lot of it happened after having babies, where I gained almost 50 pounds with every baby. And so there were definitely times where I was a lot bigger and I was not happy with my body. I had a big belly and I didn't post a lot of pictures then. So people may not realize that I definitely struggled with my weight at different times in my life, and having babies and seeing your stretched out skin and every part of your body changes. And so I think that, that people might initially judge, but I think if they really knew my background and they really knew about the things that I'm even afraid to talk about now, which is the acne, which is very embarrassing for me, then they might feel like they can relate a little bit more. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm still trying to branch out more and become even more relatable and talk about the things that I'm still embarrassed about,
Yeah, I think one thing we all need to realize is no matter how much money you have or don't have, no matter how much education you have or don't have, no matter how skinny you are or not skinny, no matter how handsome or beautiful people perceive you or not, it kind of doesn't matter. There's always someone smarter. There's always someone richer. There's always someone who seems happier. There's always someone who's skinnier or more fit or stronger. Like, it's kind of almost a level playing field that any of us can get sucked into that game, and nobody knows what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. Nobody knows what people's private insecurities are. I mean, you think about Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was an international superstar, the heartthrob of millions and millions of boys and girls. And he was always unhappy with his appearance. He was always having surgeries to tweak his appearance or to change his complexion. And the money and the fame and the status probably made things worse, not better. And so I think it's important that we have to find a way to feel good about our intelligence, our education, our marriage, our family, our appearance, our body size. That's almost like the universal human struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I wanted to talk about that and also share that I have struggled with different things and that people may not know about. And the goal is to really stop identifying ourselves with our physical bodies, which is a very challenging thing for us to do as human beings. We're very much identified with the way we look.
Yeah. All right. So the last theme that you cover in your book, My Life as a Wannabe Balanced Mom by Crystal Escobar, you end the final chapter is about being awake. Why don't we talk about that, and then we'll bring on what does that mean to you to be awake, and then we'll bring on a couple of your readers to share their perspectives about life and what they've learned from your book.
Okay. Yes. Well, I did actually want to give a little background on well, I did explain that in the middle of writing this book was when I had my faith crisis and everything came crumbling down. And I had already written about half of the book, and I signed with a publisher, a local publisher that has also published many other books from, LDS authors, like The Tattooed Mormon, The Book of Mormon Made Easier. And so when I first signed with that publisher, I was like, yes, this is perfect. I finally get to write my book. And I started writing the book halfway through. And then I had my faith crisis, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I supposed to finish this book? I just can't do it now. And so I contacted the publisher and let him know what I was going through and asked them if I could write about my faith transition in this book. And they agreed to let me write about it as long as I don't mention the name of the book or the church that I was leaving. And so I agreed to do that, and I wrote it. But then Deseret Book came back and said, because they were going to carry my book, and they said that they would love to have my book in their stores if I would remove about 3 paragraphs. So I made the decision to go ahead and remove those 3 paragraphs, but I shared the full unedited original version of that chapter 6, the breakdown before the breakthrough, on my podcast. And so yeah, I did actually get to vaguely write about my faith transition, and this book is in Deseret Book, surprisingly, and in Costco and other, and all other local bookstores in Utah. And but yeah, I was very surprised that they allowed me to talk about that in the book, and I was happy. So I guess it is still hard because I had to keep a lot of things that maybe I don't necessarily want in the book anymore, but I still want to come from a place of love for all the apostles and prophets of the church, but I did quote quite a few of them. So I still feel like it's very much authentic, but at the same time, I don't know if I would still quote them anymore.
Right. So it's a complicated thing. It's an impossible thing to write a book. It's even more complicated when you're writing a book that's going to have a religious audience and you're going through a faith crisis.
Yeah.
And you're going through your own evolution as you're writing the book.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you found a way to pull all that together, and that's to your credit.
Yeah, I think the book can relate to Mormons and ex-Mormons and anyone really.
I love it. All right. Well, this has been so fun so far. I think you're covering such an important topic. Now I think it'd be fun to bring on a couple of your readers.
Yeah.
And we've got Holly and Leandra on now. But
Awesome.
Crystal, you were going to bring on a third. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you may need to shoot a message to that third person and have them join. Leandra, if you can tilt your phone 90 degrees, that would be great, because I think you're coming across. There you go. All right. Well, let's bring on our 2 listeners for now. Let's start with Holly. Holly, welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, John. Hi, Crystal.
Hi, Holly.
Hi. I'm surprised that I actually figured out how to get on here. I was like nervous about the technology behind it.
You sound great.
Thank you. So I live in Northern California. I am married, just had our 20th year anniversary, and have 3 daughters who are amazing. Brenna, Lacey, Chloe. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I work full-time from home. And just, I don't know if I should save this for later, but maybe my connection with Crystal. Do you want that now or later?
Yeah, go ahead. And then I just want to hear a little bit about your story and what made you interested. What about your experience made you interested in Crystal's book? But I don't mind if you share the connection.
Okay. So Crystal,
I don't.
Go ahead. Okay, sorry, I thought somebody was talking. So Crystal and I knew each other a long time ago through a mutual friend, but didn't really know each other very well. And for a while, we've been following each other on social media. And last spring, or actually it was about this time last year, I won tickets to her event in Utah. So I flew in from California and came to her event. And I hope this doesn't embarrass Crystal, but we're getting real here. So I remember coming to her event. It was wonderful, but
What was the event about? What type of event was it?
It was her Wannabe Balanced event that she.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So I did not know at the time that she had been going through a lot. So I came to her event and I was really excited to meet her or see her again. And I just felt like there was kind of a disconnect with us. And so I didn't think much of it other than, oh, darn, I felt like we would maybe connect a little bit more. So that was that. And then come to find out, she had been going through her faith transition. And I had been following her during that time and sort of been going through the same thing, but not quite where she was. In fact, I was so heck bent on staying in the Mormon Church that that was just my mindset at the time. So then several months later, we connected through Instagram, and she had kind of assumed that I stopped following her because she knew that I was very devout in my faith. And at that time, we both reached out to each other, and she said that during her event that she put on, she did that in the middle of everything she was going through. And it was really hard for her because she knew that she was going to have to come out and talk about her faith transition while still putting on this event. And so it was hard for her to connect with certain people. So we just kind of had this this little beautiful little moment where I just let her know that, I was sorry that she felt that way, and she was sorry that we couldn't connect. And since then we have been able to talk to each other a lot about our stories, and hers prefaced mine by maybe 6 or 7 months. So it's just been neat to connect with her, and I just love her vulnerability, and she's just got this, I would say, a good balance between confidence and humility, which I think is a really wonderful thing to have. And I love her book. It's inspiring.
So that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Holly. Tell us just a bit about your story. I know a little bit about you. Tell us, what your journey has been at balancing motherhood, the church, and career.
Okay, that's a big question. I'm still trying to find that balance, and I think that for so long, and Crystal pointed this out in her book when I think in the beginning she talks about this. Sort of being obsessed with finding balance, and she crosses out the word obsessed and puts the word passion in there. I love that. But for me, I've always been trying to find balance between being a mother and a wife, and I've had my job for 19 years, and I've got 3 kids who are obviously very busy. And I would say that balance.
Let me ask you, how did you not get the memo that Mormon women weren't supposed to work?
Well, I think I justified it because I work from home. So,
but you were Orthodox, right? You were devout, or you are, or what do you? I see shoulders, so I guess you can't be devout if you're showing shoulders. So,
I would say I was devout for many years. I served a full-time mission. I was very active, faithful. Served in many presidencies, one after another. I think my faith transition actually began when I was Young Women's President a couple years ago. but I would say I started to acknowledge it when I was in the Relief Society presidency right after that. So yeah, I was very devout. My husband had kind of stopped believing a lot of things earlier, but I was very checked out to listening to anything he had to say, because I was all in. And so I began to have some experiences in my life where I just felt some disconnect with
Wait,
some things.
let me ask you, but let me back up a bit. What made you feel like you could work? Honestly, like I knew when I was growing up, it just, women weren't supposed to work outside the home. And there's always been a lot of pressure. Of course, there's always been working Mormon moms and working Mormon women, but there's also been this heavy culture of a bias against it. So how did you end up one of those working moms kind of from the start? What was it that made you feel comfortable going against the cultural grain?
Honestly, that's one of those cultural grains that for me, I never really felt that strongly about. Like, my mom didn't work when we were young. She got a job when we were all in school, a part-time job, but I never felt really strongly about that particular cultural view. My husband was going to medical school, residency. We needed the money. I enjoy my job. So I would say I struggle more with the guilt of balancing my kids and my job more than I do as much the church part of it. I didn't really feel a lot of guilt about that. That just was not one of those things I felt guilt about.
So what were tell us a little bit about that struggle of feeling good about your job, needing the money, feeling fulfilled in your career, but trying to parent your children. Tell us about that struggle.
I think for me, because I work from home, I had to balance my time. I've had to really learn a lot about time management, and I'm still learning that. Now that my girls are all in school full time, it's a little bit easier. When they were little, it was very hard to balance it. But now they're in school, so all hell breaks loose about 2:30 when they get home, and I still have about an hour and a half of work to do, and I have to, make threats or go put them in the closet, or no, I'm joking a little bit, but it's a little bit hard when they're home and I'm trying to work. But I think I've done a pretty good job of balancing it, and my job has been the management team over me has been really flexible and great to me to work with.
So you're kind of like a Mormon woman success story, in the sense that you've always been able to kind of find a decent balance. Of course, there's no perfection, but have a career, but also be a mom. So in that sense, you've kind of been able to find a good balance. Is that fair to say?
I would say yes, but if you were a fly on the wall of my home, you would see how emotionally hard many days are for me.
Sure. So what about Crystal's book resonated with you, Holly?
Gosh, so much of it. I mean, I have to say, just because of what I'm going through right now in my life, which is a major faith transition, and also some other things that are going on for me personally, which I'm not quite ready to talk about yet. But I think chapter 6 really resonated with me, just because I understood and had so much empathy for Crystal and for what that process is like. And I've talked about this with
Chapter 6 is called The Breakdown Before the Breakthrough. Crystal talked about this earlier. What was it about that chapter that resonated with you?
Well, if you were to look at my book, you would see all my deep, dark secrets, because I write and journal all.
Oh, wow.
So I'll just point out a paragraph that I loved. She says, "The turning point came when I finally started to relax into the fear. I felt like I was falling, but I was able to relax and enjoy it at the same time, as if I were skydiving, knowing I had a parachute attached to me and I would safely land when the time was right." And this was the part for me that really struck me. As I allowed the discomfort of fear to flow through me, and as I quit resisting it, that's when I was able to take control of my mind once again. I found my core belief in God, not the God that everyone taught me to believe in, but my own version of God. It was incredibly empowering to discover this from within, and not based on anything I was taught growing up. That was really resonating for me, because through my faith transition, I have had to find that I've had to really dig deep and go to my very core and listen to my inner voice above anyone else. And I am a pleaser. I'm a people pleaser. So it has been very hard for me to come out to people in my life and to be okay with the fact that they might be judging me or wrongly assuming things. But she talks about being open to everything and attached to nothing. And I realized that I have been attached to a lot of things, including the church, in my life. And I wasn't as open as I feel like I am now. So that just the part, she just talks a lot about surrendering and being okay with the discomfort that comes with this. And for me, that's really been the key to my growth is just to be okay with the discomfort. And that's something I'm learning one day at a time. But that chapter really resonated with me. All of them did, but that was probably my favorite.
I love it. All right, Holly, it's great to have that introduction. We'll come right back to you. Maybe we'll bring on the other panelists. Is that all right?
Yes.
All right. Leandra, is that how I pronounce your name? And let me unmute you, Leandra. Okay, go ahead, Leandra.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's Leandra, but I'm not really picky.
No, Leandra, that's
one
good.
of those names you can't be picky about.
Leandra, tell us a little bit about your story and what led you to want to read Crystal's book.
Well, my story is a little bit, it's a whole nother thing on its own. I started being a mom when I was very little. I started raising my younger siblings when I was just a little girl and taking care of them. And I'd always had this idea in my mind growing up in my biological family, like this was not how families were supposed to be. And it was just this gut instinct that someday we would have something different, whether it was our family we were born with or something else. So fast forward, I don't know, years till I was 11, we were in foster care, and almost 2 years later, we're adopted by an LDS family, which is where my introduction to the church came. And it wasn't until then, I'd always just thought, because I'd worked so hard to keep my family together, that we would always be a family. It had never entered my mind that families could be forever. It was that families are forever. And suddenly, here I was, a new convert to the church, and being told that no, families aren't forever. Families can be forever. And it's up to each individual person to make sure that that happens. So all of a sudden, my relief I felt for being adopted and having what I thought was going to be kind of the calm after this huge storm I'd been in, ended up just putting this more pressure on my shoulders to just, even my patriarchal blessing had stated that if I honored my father and my mother and I stayed true to the church, so would my little siblings. And so, sorry about that. And so all of a sudden I just had this huge pressure that now I was responsible for my siblings' eternal salvation. And that if I had any hope of being with them in the next life and any children that I would have to live as perfectly as possible. Fast forward to my adult life and having my own children, that was really hard on me because I always kind of struggled with aspects of the church, but not really understanding where those feelings that made me uncomfortable were coming from. You know, we're always told that the feelings that you have that aren't really positive about the church aren't, they're from Satan, so you just ignore them. And so with my kids, I felt like I was never enough. Nothing I could do would matter at that point. My siblings had all left the church, and I just felt like it was my fault because I wasn't perfect after I graduated high school and got married and struggled with things. And so when it came to my children, I have children with disabilities. I have a daughter that's blind and autistic and has really bad seizures. I have an 8-year-old with Asperger's, a 4-year-old with autism, and a 3-year-old with autism. And so I just felt like I was never measuring up. I saw all these moms who came to church, and one of the things that I used to joke and tell people is that I could always spot a Mormon mother because she had a smile on her face but a boulder on her shoulders. And it was just this weight that they were carrying. And when I met Crystal and Sean, I was so excited because for the first time I felt like I had met somebody a couple who's very authentic. Not just to their perfect life, but also to their imperfect life. And that's something I've always really I've tried to do myself is share not just the perfect moments, but the imperfect. And as I read Crystal's book, when I originally bought it, I was like, sweet, here's a mom that's, you know, doing something for herself. I'm going to support her and buy her book. And then after I got done reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so amazing for so many women. My favorite chapter was chapter 4, Discovering Your Mission and Your Purpose. And my most favorite line of the whole book is when she talks about how I believe each of us has something so unique and different to offer. The hard parts are discovering what it is and having the courage to move forward into action. And I feel like, especially women in the church, we grow up. I remember going to Young Women's and every single Sunday and every single Wednesday being told that we were supposed to be moms and you're supposed to do homemaking stuff and making handouts. And it was just almost like a really competitive environment, like who can have, like, every Sunday, who was going to have the best handout, the best lesson, who was going to have the best examples to share. And so even as a young woman preparing for motherhood in that program, I felt often inadequate and like I couldn't measure up. And quite honestly, I didn't want to have kids for a very long time because of the fact I had raised my younger siblings. But now I was in this church that was telling me that was my only purpose in life, was to grow up, go to college, and if I got married, to start having children. So I think Crystal's books can help a lot of women be able to understand that you can have balance between being a mom and still being true to who you are and yourself. Because if we're honest, motherhood's not the most rewarding thing in the world. Right out of the gate, you have moments where you look at your kids and you're like, are you sure you're mine? Like, are you sure that grandma didn't somehow pay someone off to give me the rotten kid? Like, because I was not a very good kid growing up, I feel like sometimes. But yeah, that's just a little bit, I guess, watered down version of my background. And then I've actually since, like, anytime I have a really good friend that I grew up with, and she called me one day and she was just in tears. And she says, I don't understand, like, how is it that I'm doing everything I'm supposed to and I still don't feel like enough? And so I just told her, I said, you need to read this book. And I bought it. I think I've bought your book and sent it to like 4 or 5 different people. But it's true, like she's having some doubts of her own. And I just feel like this would be a safe place for her to be able to feel like she's reading material that is going to relate to her as an LDS person, but also as someone who's struggling and feeling inadequate, give her kind of permission to have a breakdown. I feel like that chapter, the breakdown for the breakthrough, sometimes we have to go through those moments where we kind of crash and burn, and then we can get up and we can start fresh and know where we need to go and how we need to move forward.
I love it. Thank you, Leandra, and I'm inspired by all you're doing, especially with the special needs kids. You have your own book to write, I'm guessing.
Well, I actually have a couple. I have one coming out this summer, but it's more about my little brother. That I have a couple brothers that both left the church and ended up taking their own lives, and then that book's dedicated to them. And then I have another one that I'm writing. One of the things I've noticed is I've met a lot of women who still really want to have kind of a Christian faith after leaving the church. They want to be able to still believe in God and Christ and have that relationship with them. But now all of a sudden they have this mentality in their mind that if you don't believe in the church, how could you believe in this? And I did my research and I realized there are so many talks out there that basically tell people, if you don't believe in us, you can't really believe in the rest of it. And to me, that kind of reminds me of abusive relationship, where someone would say, if I can't have you, no one can have you. And so I've been working with some women. I have a little group called Let Go and Let God, Restoring Hope in Christ After Mormonism. And the reason why this is important to me, because I have a little 7-year-old daughter, and she came up to me once. She saw me studying and preparing a work guide for this, and she said, Mom, why are you doing all this Bible studying stuff? She's like, we only read the Book of Mormon in our church. And it hit me, like, even as a child, I realized, like, this is all we focus on. We don't focus on anything else. And then as a mom, that chapter 4 about what's your purpose. And I realized my purpose is to paved the way for my daughter and my children to know that it's okay to have your own opinion, to have your own thought process. It's okay to share your experiences and share your story. And especially if you're helping other people and you're giving them a voice and you're giving them a resting place when their heart is aching. And so that's kind of what I've been working on.
I love
it's
it.
been healing for me.
So you're finding meaning and purpose in writing about your siblings that have passed away, and about and about helping other women find spiritual alternatives to Orthodox Mormonism. That's great. Thanks for sharing, Leandra. Let's bring Erin Johnson in. Erin, thank you so much for joining us on Mormon Stories.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you and what interested you in Crystal's book.
Well, I didn't even know Crystal until I saw the podcast that you did with her and her husband, Sean.
Oh, wow. So kind of new.
Yeah, kind of new. And I actually figured out that she lives near me in the same area. And our kids actually go to the same school.
In Southern Utah.
In Southern Utah. So
wow. So your kids go to the same school. That's amazing.
Yeah, our kids go to the same school. I actually reached out to Crystal after I watched the podcast, which I was so touched by. So I reached out to her and just said, I am a post-Mormon mom in the area. I know how hard it was for me when I was going through my transition, and I'm here. I'm open arms, and anytime you want to talk or connect, we can. So I ended up meeting up with her and a couple other different women, and she asked me to do this, and I had tried to find her book at the Costco, and I couldn't find it. So she actually got me a copy of her book, and I loved it. I thought it was incredible. She did such an incredible job. And so I left the church. My husband and I left the church almost 5 years ago. And, your podcast, John, helped a lot with that and everything that we went through. And so I had a lot of admiration for Crystal and doing what she was doing, especially being a big influencer in the Instagram world and podcasts. And she's a well-known name, especially with a lot of women in Utah. I know a lot of other states as well, but she's a big name here in Utah for a lot of women. And I know that coming out with her faith transition, it could have been so debilitating, and she's just done an amazing job. And I just thought this book really was everything I needed right at this time. Everything just kind of comes together, and I felt like Crystal and I were able to meet at the perfect time, and this book came into my life, and I love it. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I was married by 18, the typical.
Wow, that's young. That's so really young.
I was married a few weeks before turning 18, and then I just knew I needed to have babies right away. I don't even think I talked to my husband about it. I just said, okay, well, we need to have babies right away. And I was pregnant 2 months after our honeymoon.
Oh my goodness.
And I was 19, and I had my first son when I was 20. And by the time he was 5 months old, I was pregnant with my second.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, and after my second was born, my second boy, we waited 3 years and added 2 more, which are 2 little girls. But we have 4 kids very close together. I'm an extremely busy, overwhelmed mom all the time, and going through a faith transition and a faith crisis about 5 years ago was earth shattering. It was earth shattering for my husband and me, and for everything that we were going through, and trying to realize if that was what was best for our children and our family. And that was a really hard decision to make. And it was really heavy for both of us. So I loved reading Crystal's book. I could sense in her words when things were starting to change for her. I actually texted her and said, I guess I don't know if your faith transition was before, during, or after this book, but I can see a change in certain things that you are writing about, certain things that you're talking about. And she kind of explained that it was more in the middle. But there were so many good messages in her book that really just made me personally want to just be a better person in my own mind and my own being, so that I can be a better mother, so that I can be a better wife, and that I also need to be better, and I need to be better so that I can be a better person to spread that onto my family, which I think is huge. I think that's the most important thing in being a mom and a parent in general.
Yeah, that's its own. Now that we think about it, we've talked about being a balanced mom from the standpoint of having a career. Leandra talked about having special needs kids, but being a mom going through a faith crisis is its own event begging for balance, isn't it?
It really was. It was so hard. And my husband and I, we left the church after finding out a lot of information.
How many years into your marriage were you?
Okay, so around 8 years we've been married.
Okay, yeah,
and all four kids.
4 kids, 8 years,
four kids. None of my kids had turned 8 yet. I had a son who was 7, and he was going to be turning 8 soon. And after learning everything that we learned and really realizing that my husband and I both didn't believe in the teachings anymore of the church, our biggest concern was, is this what's right for our kids? And, living where we do, living in Utah, it is extremely hard to leave this religion. It's really hard to be any other religion or non-religious in such a high populated Mormon community. And so one of our biggest concerns was, will this be the right decision for our children? And will it help them or will it hinder them in their lives? And so we thought a lot about that, and it just came down to, this is what we know we need to do for them, and it's going to be the best decision. And we've had to deal with that as they've gotten older. We didn't baptize any of our 4 children. And we are very happy about that decision. We have no regrets on that. I feel like it kind of came into my life. Like I said, things come in at certain times for a reason. And I felt like my faith transition happened at the right time for our family, because I never felt like I needed to force my 8-year-old child to make a decision that he was too young to make.
How have you balanced what have been some keys or some tips to having 4 kids under the age of 8 and being a wife and navigating a faith crisis? Do you have any tips or advice for women who are trying to juggle that kind of scenario?
Well, I feel like you have to be very aware, like a lot of what Crystal's book talks about. You have to be confident in your own mind and your own thoughts. I remember there were so many days where I would sit and study and read and read and read for hours on end. And I felt like maybe I wasn't giving my kids the attention that they needed because I was going through such a severe crisis at the time. But I spent so much of that time also really loving on my kids. Like I really felt like I needed to show them that I was going through this really hard thing, but that I was doing it for the potential outcome of my family. And so also I have an incredibly supportive husband that we were going through this at the same time, but my husband's always been a really great dad. He never, he always wants to come home and the first thing he wants to do is spend time with the kids. And I'm really lucky in that way. He tries to get off work as early as he can to get home and to see us. And so we do a lot of co-parenting together. There's not a lot of his role, her role. And so there's a lot of co-parenting, and co-parenting through a faith crisis was extremely difficult, extremely hard. But I felt like I did a lot of reading, a lot of research on how to be a better person and a better mother, just not within the religion, just in general, which a lot of women don't really understand how to do. Especially if they've been raised in an Orthodox religion like, the Mormon religion is.
Absolutely. Well, Crystal, let's bring you back in. Leandra, it looks like she may have had to drop off for a second. Do you have a question for Holly or Erin, or for both of them? As what's it like as an author to have your readers come on and talk about the book you wrote?
It's very flattering. I love hearing you guys refer to it. It's just kind of fun because when you publish a book, you don't always get to hear the thoughts that are going through people's minds as they're reading it. So it is a treat for me to hear other moms' perspectives. And I think I would just love to hear, like in closing, maybe hear any other parts that maybe you highlighted, or a part that really stood out to you, because I think it's fun to just to know that.
Yeah. So Holly, what's if you were gonna, as we're kind of starting to draw a little bit towards the close, and it's been so fun to have you and Holly and Erin and Leandra, all of you on to talk about what Crystal's book has meant to you. What's one tip or thing you've learned or piece of advice you would offer wannabe balanced moms? How about you, Holly? Let's start with you.
I just think for me that to answer Crystal's question about another part maybe that stood out, and this would answer your question too, John, the chapter on, is it called, I think it's chapter 11, don't worry about being liked or something. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's hard for me because I used to try to be the Pinterest mom, and Crystal talked about that when you were first interviewing her. But let's be real. Nobody can find a deep connection with the Pinterest mom.
Right.
I just think that I just came to this point in my life where things in the church did not resonate anymore. I was finding more fulfillment in other areas. And then when I found out it was not absolutely true in the ways I thought it was, I just knew that I needed to move on to other things. And the risk was that I was going to not be liked by a lot of people in my life.
That's hard.
It's very hard. But I think she refers to this as emotional adulthood. And you just come to this point where it's worth the risk to you because it's about integrity and honesty, and you kind of weed people out that love you for you or don't love you for you. They love you for your belief system, or they love you for who you are at your core. And so I got to the point where I was really just willing to take that risk. And this is my first time outside of family and friends and small groups being really public. So this is a little bit hard for me. I'm shaking a little bit.
You're doing great.
Thank you. But I think that concept of just not worrying what everybody thinks, is really one that I've had to embrace and that I'm learning about every day. You have to find yourself in this journey, and it's about growing. And part of that is letting go of the image that you have built up over your life. And so I really loved that part of the book.
I love it. And I struggle with that too, Holly. I really resonate with wanting to be liked, and then just realizing that almost the more I try and please people, the more of a mess I make. And so if you're not going to be able to be liked by everybody, you may as well just be your best self. And that really is a nice sifting process. You find out who your real friends are, and those friendships that remain. It's almost like Margie always likes to say this, she got it from others, that saying no to some things gives you the space to say yes to others. And as you lose relationships in your life that you valued at one time or that meant a lot to you, there are holes that open up from that. But the benefit is those holes become places or space for new friendships to develop. It can actually be 2 or 3 times more meaningful and fulfilling than any of the friendships you lost. But you had to say no to those other relationships to be able to make room for the new ones.
That's so true. And I think for me, it's allowed me to become more emotionally intimate with my children. I stressed for nights and nights about telling them where I was. And once I did, it just opened up the doors for more honest communication. And it's been hard. But we've connected in a deeper way. And I've connected with my husband in a deeper way. I've connected with other people in a deeper way. And I think that I also have to realize sometimes people just need time to digest new information. And I want to make it clear that the people that do love me for me, I'm really grateful for them. But by golly, not being liked and not having to, just letting go of not being liked by everyone. It's kind of freeing too. It gives you more space for more.
It totally does. I can't imagine anyone not liking you, Holly, but I get it. But you're so delightful and lovely to come on Mormon Stories. It's great to see you here. I can tell you've got your own story, so we may have to have you back to tell your story. How's that?
Thank you. Well, I will say Mormon Stories was my saving grace during many, many dark nights. So you know that I love you and I love your stories, and they were hard, many of them to hear, but they were what got me through many lonely nights, and they still do. So
thank you, Holly. Well, all the best to you and your wonderful family, and let's find a way to get you back on. How's that?
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks, Crystal.
Erin, give us one moment, one nugget gem of wisdom from Crystal's book or not, as a way to kind of close out for today.
Well, I just have to say what Holly was just saying, I thought was so, I agree with what she was saying within Crystal's book, that feeling, I was just talking to my husband about this before I came on this podcast with you guys, that it's really hard to not be liked. But like Crystal said in her book, there's always going to be someone that doesn't like you. Not for any specific reason, but it could just be because you don't mesh with that person. And that's totally natural and normal. But to feel like someone—
Or they're jealous, or they're envious of you, right?
Yeah, it could be a number of things. And so to feel accepting of the fact that not everyone's going to like you is a really hard pill to swallow. And I don't like that thought. I really, I'm a people pleaser. I want people to like me. But if I have come to the point though, that what I've realized is if people don't like me, that's okay. Because not there's some people I don't like, and I can't explain why. I can't pinpoint it. It's just a thing. Not all people mesh, and like what you were just saying, getting rid of those relationships opens the doors and the space for new relationships that usually are, 10 times better than the fake relationship that was. So I loved that. But there were a couple of things in her book that just really stood out to me. There were a couple chapters. Discovering your mission and purpose was a huge chapter for me. And there was something that I kind of marked on here. It says, sometimes we get so caught up in achieving the big goals that we forget what is most important. The one thing that you can do is be a mother to your children, a wife to your husband, a daughter to your parents. So when it comes to figuring out your purpose and your mission in life, it must start with the ones you love the most, and then it can trickle out into the rest of the world. I love that because I think that we can all agree that family is so important. And especially when, you're going through a faith transition and you're dealing with eternal families and that subject that is really, really hard for a lot of people when they leave the church. It's all about love. That is all it is. And even my parents, who have heartache over me and my husband leaving the church, the love that I have for them, and I know now the love that they have for me is, I want to say unconditional, but there's a lot of stipulations to an unconditional love, but I feel it's an unconditional love from my parents. And I feel like it's trickled down to me, and my unconditional love for my husband and children is trickled down into them. And I think then it spreads into other relationships that we have. But I think family is the most important for where our love needs to be focused. So that was a huge one for me that I loved.
I'll just piggyback. Yeah. It absolutely, one of the gifts of a Mormon faith crisis, and we talk about this on the podcast, the gift of the Mormon faith crisis, is you learn how to build relationships on a new foundation, which is on common values, unconditional love, and of course, no love is unconditional. So it's unconditional love with an asterisk, which means you fulfill a basic level of respect and commitment to the same sorts of things. But after that, you can be more vulnerable, you can be more open, you can share your feelings, and you develop this deeper intimacy that becomes contagious. And it gets to the point where you don't want any fake superficial relationships anymore. And it's like this positive spillover or bleed over that can actually enhance all your relationships when it started with just a few. And it really can lead to a transformative perspective where all your relationships get upgraded just from a faith crisis and one or two relationships having to go through it. So I love that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And what Crystal was saying earlier, how there are a lot of relationships in the community for women, the community of, the LDS Church. We have all of these relationships with all these other women and people in our wards and in our neighborhoods, but no one really goes deeper. No one ever goes past the surface level. And I feel like after you go through something like a faith crisis, you really do find people who are willing to go onto that deeper level with you, and your friendships that you create are deeper. They are like, even just with Crystal. I mean, Crystal and I met just a few weeks ago, and I can already feel, a deeper connection where we're able to talk about things that are really hard and that are things that we've both really struggled with. And it's harder when you're in a type of a community with a church or religion where you feel like you can't really be 100% vulnerable and 100% open and honest with everything you're going through. So I agree, John, with what you're saying. Those relationships become deeper, more important, and they matter more when you've gone through some huge life change like what we've gone through.
No one gets us like no one gets a post-Mormon like another post-Mormon, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. So there was one other thing on her book, and then that can be my turn being done. But so in the chapter, the should I have another baby, which resonated a lot with me because our decision to not having any more children was a tough one. But 4 kids, I've got 4 kids really close, so it was probably the smartest decision to not. But I loved this, that she said in this chapter, again, this is a reminder that the wrong choice doesn't exist in the end. It will all come together exactly in the way it was supposed to. You can't avoid pain or sorrow. They are an important part of life. We must experience the bad in order to appreciate the good. So stop choosing confusion, make a choice, and go with it. You can always turn back. Nothing is a waste of time. It is what it is. You move on, you keep going. Our lives are great, big puzzles. The pieces by themselves make absolutely no sense. But little by little, if you connect the pieces, you begin to see a beautiful masterpiece. Trust that everything will all make sense in the end, and you will find meaning in every choice, every mistake, and every detour. I love it. Yeah, that was one of the best.
All right. Well, Erin Johnson, same thing that I said to Holly. I'm quite sure that you've got your own story, so maybe we'll have to have you back on Mormon Stories. How would that be?
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the invite, and this was fun. Thank you.
Are you in Southern Utah?
I am. Yep, Southern Utah.
Crystal, we'll have to do like a Mormon Stories Wannabe Balanced Mom kind of retreat in Southern Utah.
I know, that'd be so fun.
I know a lot of women who would come.
Yeah.
Let's do that. We'll have like a women's empowerment retreat or something.
Yeah, that would be so fun.
And I'll just sit in the back and I'll serve. I'll do the food. Yeah. I'll serve the drinks. I'll clean up afterwards.
You and Sean can be our manservants.
We'll make the food. Yeah, Sean and I'll be the manservants. Holly, what do you think? Are you going to come?
I'll be there. Yes. Yeah.
Be there. All right. You heard it first here on Mormon Stories. Woman's retreat, Sean and John as the manservants, yes. Either in Draper or in Southern Utah, coming to a town near you soon. Crystal, anything, we're going to give you the final word. Anything else you want to say?
No, I genuinely appreciate this time to talk about my book. It feels really exciting to have this like 10-year goal to finally be manifested, and then to hear people who have read it, knowing that people are reading it and hearing what they have to say about it is just really satisfying and fulfilling for me. So I just appreciate this opportunity, John. And of course, I've told you this before, that your podcast is where it all began for me. So I just want to thank you again for that. My pleasure. Tiffany Johnson Hatch writes, she wants to come to our retreat. We've already got our first attendee. And she writes, I'll teach yoga at the retreat. It's my religion. So not only do we have our, what's that, Holly? You do too, right, Holly?
I was going to say there must be yoga, so she needs to come.
It was
don't you teach too, Holly?
I was thinking about.
Okay, wait, Holly, do you teach yoga?
I might be. I'm going to be doing a teacher training this fall.
Okay, but you do yoga.
I do yoga. I do hot
Okay.
yoga.
And Erin, what'd you say?
I said Tiffany Hatch, who commented that, was one of the first women I thought of in my mind that I knew would be there.
Oh.
Okay, wait. Kate writes, I want to go to the retreat, but I'm not a mom. What do you guys want to say to Kate?
It doesn't matter. Are you a dog mom, a plant mom, a kid mom?
Yeah.
You're
We're
a
all
mom.
moms in some way, I'm sure.
How about just women empowerment? It doesn't need to be
Women
moms.
empowerment.
Yeah.
Women are moms of their book collections, their jewelry collections. We all have
Yeah.
something that makes us feel like that. So I think it's amazing. Women empowerment.
How about
Mhm.
women's are moms of themselves sometimes?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's super fun. Well, let's do it. So Crystal, it's a delight. Again, the book is My Life as a Wannabe Balanced Mom by Crystal Escobar. It's available apparently at Deseret Book and at Costco. I'm sure it's on Amazon. And if you're wanting to be a balanced mom or just a balanced human, it's worth checking out. So Erin Johnson, thanks for coming on Mormon Stories.
Thank you.
Take care. I hope to meet
Thank
you in
you so
person sometime
much.
soon.
Sounds good. Bye.
Holly, you're awesome. It's such a
Thanks,
delight to
bye.
have you on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you, girls. I
Been a
appreciate you guys.
pleasure. And Crystal, you keep up the good work. Tell us about your YouTube channel, your blog. How do people follow what you do? Your Instagram channel. How do people follow you?
Yeah, everywhere. You can find me everywhere under Wannabe Balanced. We have our podcast called Wannabe Balanced, and then on YouTube and Instagram. And my website is wannabebalanced.com. And then just wanted to say we'll be seeing you this weekend at the Thrive Conference. We're so excited about it. Cannot wait.
Thrive. Yeah, we're stoked. We're doing a conference that's sold out, 300 people, Salt Lake City, June 7th through 9th. Healing and Joy After Mormonism. And it's just going to be a bunch of amazing speakers. And we're going to do more Thrive conferences as well. So thanks for that shout out. And Crystal, you and Sean will be talking about navigating a marriage and keeping balance in a marriage. And I wish I could get more people to come, but we're sold out. So
Yeah.
you guys will just have to stay tuned at mormonfaithcrisis.com/events. Look for more events in the coming months and years ahead. But thanks again, Crystal. Hope to
Thank
see
you,
you back
John.
on Mormon Stories.